I was going to write this out, but it's quite a complicated process, so I thought a video might be better. So far, my favorite series or my favorite art that's been produced with this process of the 9 to 12, spending time just alone with my art, was the self-portraits. For me, this was kind of a surprise, but also because the reason why I did it was I have struggled with self-loathing and self-image my entire life. I don't particularly enjoy photos of myself. I think it has softened over the years as I've got to know myself. And these last couple of years, I think I'm finally able to look at that. I rarely took selfies until the last couple of years. And then I started taking selfies as an act of discipline, as an act of kind of looking at my face. But I have so much dysphoria when I see my face, and it takes the smallest thing to be like, that angle's stupid and whatever, and duck face and all that shit is just not my jam. So yeah, what I thought I would try and do is expand that self-portrait series and do a love letter to my body, and kind of go over the things, the parts of the body that I perhaps like about myself. That was the idea. And then this week that shifted just a little bit into this series, which I just started. So I got this brand new, how do you turn this around? I don't know anything. Is there a way to turn it around? Dumb. Whatever. I got this brand new artist deck. It's a riff on Oracle and Tarot. So I thought I would start to use that as the inspiration. Up until now, I've been using these vintage books, and you'll see those as I upload retroactively to Patreon, what I've been doing. But it just feels like sometimes sitting in a particular book, in a particular context for a minute, allows me to kind of just sit in the headspace. So when I first pulled the first card, I think my question on Monday was, where's my art been? Where is it now? And where is it going? Oh, no, that wasn't my question. Was it? Oh, I don't remember. There's so many tarot spreads I've done. I think it was, where's my art been? Where is it now? And where am I going? And yeah, I was really struck by that. You'll be able to see the things that I pulled further down in this post. But essentially what I kind of landed on then was like a lot of my personal work and a lot of my recovery and a lot of my therapy work has been around getting back to my senses, getting back to my body. And that's been really helpful for me and my mental health. And so I thought maybe I should do a series on the 5 senses. And I sat down, and you'll see a little bit on the time-lapse video, because I filmed some of that, just lay on my bed with this huge piece of paper and just riffed and just kind of like brainstormed. And it flowed pretty easily. I'll put the results again down the bottom of the post. And what I landed on was the 5 senses and what they represent. So this week's series, and I didn't know if it was going to be like one different sense every single day, but it did feel good to kind of maybe sit inside them. This week's series was the mouth, was taste as a sense. And the kind of the thing that I, obviously associate with mouth as speaking is words. And I was thinking about the prophet Jeremiah and the words that he spoke out loud and described them as bittersweet, sweet to the mouth and bitter to the belly. The internal part that I think that really spoke to was Seth. Seth is a teenage version of myself. Seth is a hugely protective part. Seth is probably my most violent part. Seth is the part that when the words come out, they're angular and cold and cutting. It is the part that takes my softness and my empathy and my emotions offline and just sort of rages against the machine. Seth grew up in the 90s with grunge and fuck you, I can't do what you tell me. And that's kind of his punkishness that I kind of wanted to explore, and the ways in which those angular feelings, those angular words have both hurt myself and hurt other people. So on there we talked about waging war via the tools of the master, i.e. words. I was handed so many words through church and this idea, you know, I've got a record called As If Words Could Heal the Wounds. So yeah, I really kind of thought about that, about taking some of that back and trying to kind of use words in the artwork, but really kind of sit in the emotions and really try and understand what Seth is raging about. I think Seth is defined by being against things. That again was what I was handed really as a child with my religion. It's like, we're not this and we're not that. And I think that I've kind of internalized all that. It's like what I'm not, but I, you know, often struggle with trying to figure out what I'm for or who I am. In terms of music taste, I think, you know, Seth was a grunge kid. Seth was more hard music. It was more dark music. It was more rock and roll. I think Happenstance, to a certain degree, was sort of an outpouring of Seth in many ways. You know, with sort of lyrics that are sarcastic and cutting, and kind of that lashing out kind of thing. I think there's a lot of stuff in Happenstance that never quite. I mean, it wasn't always my words. You know, there were obviously other people in the band, but there's a lot of Happenstance lyrics that I look back on and go, oof, like that's not so great. And then, yeah, the question that I thought about, well, the song that I thought about exploring and reworking and well, I never released in the first place. It was a Happenstance song called Pastor's Son that I already had communicated with the band a couple of months ago about releasing that version. We did actually record a demo of it, and I thought we could potentially release a Happenstance version and then release an updated Ben Grace version, which is slower. It's Pastor's Son, in parentheses, slow down. So that's kind of what I started with. That was my kind of thesis for this week. The thing that kind of sprung to mind straight away was very 90s, Happenstance. I think a lot of the posters we had at the front of our EP was all black, white, and red. Very 90s. Not so much something that I kind of jive with now, although I think there's times that I have really, you know, I've had red Converse boots and I wore black a lot, you know, especially in New York. And I do have this little piece down here, which I really don't resonate with anymore, but I picked up at a thrift store because I think it is very Seth, and it's a butterfly in a cage with all this filigree, which I think is kind of cheesy, but the black and white on the outside. This is a real butterfly. It's a blood red glider, species Simothe sangaris, origin Central Africa. And, you know, a while ago, when I felt like I was locked in a bit of a Seth state, I wandered into a store with things like that and bought that. So yeah, I thought I would sort of stick with this sort of black and white and red theme. So you'll see that throughout the week as it progresses. Oh, I'm recording this on Thursday, by the way, so I'm kind of talking about a lot of it looking back. What else am I missing in all this? So yeah, I think that's what you're going to see this week. I think you're going to see Seth come out. You're going to see the emergence of more violent forms. I think the last couple of days I've ripped up images of myself. I've torn them. I've distressed the edges of them. I've sort of defaced them in a way. And yeah, it hasn't been so much, you know, that the mouth thing has been interesting. Yesterday's, I took some sticky tape and I was just pushing at the printout and ripping bits off, and I ripped off quite a bit of the mouth and then I stuck it back on. In today's, the grief piece, you know, I put grief across my mouth, and obscured my mouth. And I think in many ways that's what it felt like to me. There was so much of my story that I felt like I couldn't say out loud, so much of my childhood wounds and grief, so much encounter with church that I stuffed down for a long time. And then personally in my own life, 5 miscarriages and 2, my math is terrible. My memory is 5 miscarriages and 2 chemical pregnancies, or maybe it was 4 and 1, I don't know. It was a lot of miscarriage and grief that I carried over the last couple of years of my first marriage, that my ex really didn't want to talk about. And I kind of bottled a lot of that up, and it really destroyed me internally. So that's what I'm doing this week. And next week we'll be on to one of the other 5 senses. I'd love to hear your feedback. I really would. Not so much just kind of like what you like. And that's great. If you want to kind of reflect on what you like, I love that. But just if anything kind of resonates with you, I think for me, art is a place as a container for our inner life, our thoughts, our feelings, all that kind of stuff. And perhaps, I don't know, this might be an interesting thing if you want to follow along, and you want to sit in a particular. If you also want to doodle with me, you could do that too, and you could doodle along, and we could do a share at some point, an adult show and tell, maybe on a monthly live stream or something. So, I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along. I don't really have a plan. I just wanted to share, and I wanted to be able to transmit, and I wanted to communicate. And so far, it has been my utter joy. And whether anybody likes it, I don't give a shit. I'm having a good time. I'm doing some really healing work here. All right. I think that's all I have to say. Love ya. Bye.